Welcome to the Technologies Impacting Society podcast, where we explore the profound ways that technology is shaping our world and transforming our lives today. I'm your host, inaomurchu, and in this episode, I got to explore algorithmic diversity with Yonah Welker on the topic of social technologies, AI and robotics addressing cognitive, sensory, physical and non-physical differences accessible to cities and ecosystems. Yonah's mission is to shape the future of algorithmic diversity, algorithms and policy addressing human capacity, ability, neurodiversity, well-being such as social, emotional and human-centered AI, emerging learning, work and city solutions. He has contributed to policy and ethic frameworks and curated experiential projects. Yonah has also spent over 60 world appearances to bring awareness to the neuro-exclusion crisis that we have today. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Yonah, the listeners, and let us know a bit about your background.
My name is Yonah Welker, and I'm focused on 3 levels of technology, policy, and creative projects addressing areas of cognitive health, neurodiversity, human capacity. It includes technologies such as AI for dyslexia, autism, mental health disorders such as depression, anxiety, but also other areas such as educational tools, platforms, social robotics, bionic technology, and all of this universal.
We're seeing the whole area of cognitive diversity and the disability. What are some of the key ways in which cognitive diversity can help to close the disability inclusion gap in the development and the implementation of AI technologies, in your opinion?
Yes, it's a very good question. So first of all, in our community, people prefer to use the term neurodiversity. My work is a bit broader and I call it cognitive diversity. So what's the difference? So neurodiversity is typically some kind of a natural differences we all have, or sometimes it's more kind of a deeper spectrum. It encompasses attention deficit disorder, dyslexia, autism syndrome. But for me, the work is broader. I'm trying to address not only things we're born with, but also disorders as well, because your attention can be affected by mental health, by autoimmune disorders, by tiredness. And it affects how you use particular applications. So, for instance, you can look tired. Due to this fact, facial recognition system or computer vision can identify you as a drunk, or identify you not correctly. Or you can have some neurological disorders which affect your facial expressions. So my work encompasses both neurodiversity and some kind of differences driven by mental or other type of disorders. And that's why we need some kind of accommodation and consideration in terms of how we build algorithms, how we research people. When we build products and solutions, it includes sensory diversity, cognitive diversity, tactile experiences, how people interact with the devices, platforms. It helps us to have a better understanding how we build smart cities. And now there's a broader concept called cognitive cities. It is a further development of smart cities with the more use of AI, personalization, some kind of interaction and connection of people together. And finally, why it's so important, my goal is to bring awareness to how we see the universal design, because I believe not only design should be universal, but algorithms should be very flexible in order to understand all of the layers, all of the elements of the spectrum of your health, of your diversity, of some kind of impairments you potentially have, in order to not exclude you, to not bring some kind of harm, and also actually bring positive impact. Specifically, then we build AI for work technology or talent screening, schools, medical applications, nursing, and even more special areas such as the police or military systems.
So how can AI then be designed to better accommodate diverse needs and abilities of individuals, these individuals with disabilities? And what role can cognitive diversity play in this process?
Yes, so there are a few elements. So first of all, we should understand that area of a cognitive diversity is very broad. There are over a billion of people who have some kind of affection driven by neurological disorder, mental health disorders. It's about many people, not some kind of a minority group. So it's at least like 1 in 7 people in the world. Second is about research criteria. When we build algorithm, when we design AI system, when we provide audit of this system, we create the framework addressing, on one hand, all of these research layers of a sensory, cognitive criteria, but also other things, such as which stakeholders involved in how exactly they use this application. So, for instance, when we design platform for autistic children, we take into account not only the child, but also the caregiver or parent. And we have 2 interfaces or 2 versions of apps or 2 screens, which help us to take different type of data input from both of them. Also, we take into account that such people use not only one app, but sometimes few platforms. So this technology become modular. For instance, you have some app which help you to keep your focus or build daily tasks, but also you have some kind of a Fitbit or a well-being tracking device. And all of these devices accumulate some data and can be used in interconnection. So this ecosystem become connected. And finally is a awareness about AI, so and how it can benefit such groups. So for instance, just last year, we created the summit where we had the Museum of AI driven by the story of a neurodivergent individual. It's a life cycle from the birth to adulthood to maturity and so on. And we're showing how divergent individuals can interact with the technologies as a child, as an adult, how it evolves, how it's different. And in this way, we are able to explain to researchers, to UX and UI designers, how we can create this curriculum of research and development, how we can make it in proper way. In another example, one of the companies, our circle is called Robokind, and there are another examples from Europe like Lux AI. They focus on social robotics for autism, and both mentioned that for them, not only developing this robot is critical, but building the curriculum of how to adopt it properly, how to create the connection between the parent, educator, classroom, the type of a spectrum. So these companies literally become kind of a learning and education companies. And their work, it's not only about technology anymore, it's about social studies, it's about identification of a professional and competence framework, is about curriculums, is about really deep intersectional research approach. And also, let's do not forget about such aspect as a comorbidity. Comorbidity is underlying conditions. So for instance, from 25% to 40% of people with learning disabilities also experience mental health problems. Also, such individuals more likely to have allergies or other conditions. Also, we should take into account the aspect of a gender. So for instance, girls are very frequently misdiagnosed typically in not about AI, but generally in medical field. And this bias, these wrong approaches become a part of a data set and AI system. So as AI developers, you should take into account all of these existing biases in order to eliminate them.
There are obviously ways that AI will have to be better designed to cater for the diverse range of humanity that we have. What can we do about the bias in the data set? If the data isn't clean, this is neutral, it's starting off on
exactly.
wrong footing.
It's a very interesting thing because we have a lot of discussion about open AI today, and similar companies like DeepMind who create massive projects related to generative AI. And we had a lot of discussion about the main problem is not about technology anymore. The main problem we have is about society. I mean, for instance, 85% of people with autism are not employed, not due to the technology, but due to the social bias, due to the existing stance against these people, due to how we see, let's say, people talent, because typically we identify extrovert people is like a smarter, more positive, and it's our perception. Being active, being very high, having very high ability in communication is like our sign and symbol of intelligence, of a proactivity, of a passion, and we put this bias into the system. And it's not like a hypothesis. Just recently, I uploaded my content, by the way, related to AI bias to one of the educational platforms. And platforms identified that I'm not alive because there's particular vision how your face typically moving or shifting, then you're talking about something. But just imagine if you have a neurological disorder which affect your face, your mimic, posture, your gesture, how you move your hands. So the system are based on our vision of people, of their ability, of their intelligence, of their talent. All of the social issues are just put into the systems, and it relates to our ability, racism, many other problems we have in society.
There are other challenges in this area for sure. What are some of the challenges and the limitations, Yonah, associated with incorporating cognitive diversity into the AI development? And how can these be overcome to promote greater inclusion and accessibility?
Yes, it's actually a very complex task. And I believe the first thing to start is a representation. In disability community, we have a motto, nothing about us without us. And it means that if you would love to eliminate bias towards particular group, you should immediately integrate this group into your company, into your project, into your research group, and these people should be involved in development of this technology. And for instance, a very popular platform for hiring autistic people is called Ultranauts, and 75% of their employees are also on the spectrum. So it's created by these people for these people. That is what representation is, the first thing. Second thing is accessible vocabulary. We have a lot of discussion, for instance, what is a correct word, like neurodiverse or neurodivergent. Now we know if we talk about individual, we use the term neurodivergent. But also there's an evolving framework related to human rights, protection, children's rights, bioethics, medical terminology, which immediately become a part of the teams and kind of a common language we all use to better understand the problem of the bias, and more importantly, this historical exclusion, why it's happening. So we bring these social studies to the board, to the part of education and a part of a discussion across all of the stakeholders. 1 year ago, I worked on AI justice framework and how we could bring this discussion to different levels of the stakeholders, including executive level, board members, and it's a very complex task to create this vocabulary which clear for everyone. And another thing is the following existing frameworks, because actually there are a lot of things which are done on the higher level to fight it. There is a UNESCO AI ethics recommendation. It's an open source document which provides us with the guidance. There is a UNICEF AI for children, and also UNICEF AI for Girls with Disabilities. It's a special document which was released just few months ago. There is a UN AI recommendation. There is a World Health Organization recommendation. There is a World Economic Forum recommendation. There are frameworks driven by particular companies like AI ethics framework by Deloitte. So there are open documents which you can use to learn how to work towards your framework. And my team worked on such framework. It was driven by European Commission. It was released 2 years ago, and it's also accessible in open source. And after that, we can talk about audit. So when we build the representation, a vocabulary framework, we can use the audit, checking the data sets, systems, algorithms at all of the levels of a development, taking into account the aspects of a fairness, accountability, transparency, avoiding silos, avoiding black box, then we are not able to explain what's happening behind the model. How we ensure that all of the data input and different stakeholders are taken into account, how the whole ecosystem of devices or tools or platforms are connected, and so on.
Then how can artificial intelligence be used to promote the human rights of neurodivergent individuals, such by providing greater access to education, employment, and other opportunities? And again, obviously, there are some challenges that are going to need to be overcome. But what would be the main challenges that companies, like you mentioned, Deloitte there, how can they implement it and make it easy for these individuals?
It's a very tough question. So first of all, it's a social problem, and it's a problem of a diversity itself, not only cognitive diversity, but any kind of a diversity. I believe there are some steps made on the corporate level to bring diversity, but I believe a lot of people are not really sincere about this. I think they try to do something because they would love to look better as a brand or as a company for a public perception, but they're not truly passionate about diversity themselves. Specifically, then they're just pushed by society to make this change. And I believe these groups of people or companies are very challenging to actually bring these changes. One of my peers, she's working on the platform called Debias, and this platform is focused on racial justice, and she tried to incorporate it across different organizations. And sometimes it's very challenging, even due to some political reasons. She can share even more. She's still developing this project and shares some updates from time to time. And from neurodiversity for disability is the same. So 85% of people with autism were not employed. People with severe mental health disorders, such as schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, their unemployment is up to 70%. For Down syndrome, is up to 45%. Until today, the public spaces were not optimized for people with a different type of disabilities. And some people just believe that when we try to incorporate and include these people, they make a favor. But they do not understand that actually, if you provide them with a very small accommodation, such as a remote working or remote learning, or just, let's say, less communication type of a workplace, focus on more solitary activity, these people actually can be extremely smart, out-competing majority of other people, specifically in particular areas of their interest. So they're extremely competitive, and based on the statistics, inclusion actually can bring up to 30% more revenue to companies. So even if you're not a good person and you are not care about people, at least inclusion actually bring a lot of change to economy, because these people are smart, they are talented. They just need this small accommodation or optimization or a personalized experience, or maybe a remote learning or working. And if we are bring this change, we actually can do a lot. So the main challenge here is a social perception, is existing bias, is a high-level stakeholders, board members, and executives. Some very big, specifically conservative thinking companies or governments, we need to change their thinking about the problem. We do not make the favor. We must do it because neurodiversity and cognitive disability inclusion benefit the whole society. It will improve and change the technology for everyone because adaptive and personalized technology can innovate working platforms, educational platforms, smart cities, for everyone. It will improve and innovate companies and ecosystems themselves. So we should work on it further.
How is the artificial intelligence being used to help diagnose? And I suppose this might have been a question I could have asked you earlier. There must be a way that artificial intelligence can be used to help diagnose. But what are the potential benefits and risks associated with these AI applications?
Yes, so first of all, I would love to mention some of my favorite technologies because when we say an AI is a quite broad definition, so I would love to mention some technologies which I like, which help to accommodate and assist people on the spectrum. For instance, one example is the social robotics. I mentioned some companies like Robokind or Lux AI, which help to create adaptive learning for kids. So we can incorporate it in classrooms. But such social companions also can be used at workplaces for mental health purposes or for anxiety control, for more balanced workplaces. So this field of the social companions is very big. Or another example is a company, Brain Power, and they work on smart glasses with augmented reality. They collaborate with the Google Glass, and it allows to identify emotions. So people with a particular impairment, such as autism, they have issues identifying human emotions. So for instance, child is not able to recognize mother emotion, and technology help to using facial recognition to provide the description for the child and better understand it. Once again, similar technologies can be used across workplaces for different type of empathy training. There are projects made through virtual reality or augmented reality. Try yourself in someone's shoes. Some time ago, it was a project which helped people to understand what it's like to be in jail, what it's like to be marginalized, what it's like to be wrongly attacked by police, to be in someone's shoes, to experience and train these empathy skills. Or another example is a company called BeMe.ai, and it's focused on the whole autism spectrum and well-being tracking. So it can collect all of the information about your performance, about your nutrition related to autism spectrum. And such type of platforms can be used for a different condition as a mental health. So in terms of companies, in terms of ecosystems, such technologies can be easily integrated, but at the same time, there are a few other elements which should be taken into account. First is the digital competence framework. So if you integrate such technologies, you should bring trainings and upskilling related to how to use this technology properly. We should provide the training. For instance, we cooperate with some agencies who train organization how to use this technology, how to make disability inclusive workplaces, both from the social perspective, but also using particular tools. So it's about this training. And third, as I mentioned, is it bringing this accessible vocabulary. So everyone across workplaces are able to discuss existing problems of exclusion, problems of harassment, because individuals on the spectrum are frequently an object of an attack, of harassment or abuse. So we should be open to discuss it, use appropriate language. So trainings addressing vocabulary, particular themes, topics, at all of the levels of organizations, including developers, researchers, executives, is very important as well.
Just wanted to let you know that this episode was brought to you by Oriel's Magnesium Ionic Drops, called Magnesium Mineral Balance. Oriel's Ionic Magnesium Drops help you to get that deep sleep and boost your energy and immune system. I've got a 10% off discount code called INA10 that you can use at their checkout. Go to the link in the podcast description below.
You see them completely as tools and not replacement, obviously, for individuals, because you can't totally automate the area of medicine. It's impossible. Even though that these tools, you said, they'd be able to scan the eye and be able to detect certain disease. It's really incredible. It's what they can do now. I suppose this leads into the next question then. There are obviously risks with using those technologies. And like, as you said, being neurodivergent, you're just on the spectrum, but there's obviously potential risks and benefits of using AI to monitor and track neurodivergent behaviour. But how can we ensure these technologies are used in ways that are consistent with their human rights and dignity?
Yeah, so if we talk about neurodiversity, we can treat it because it's not disorder, but natural spectrum. If we're more talking about mental health, because it's important to mention that people with autism frequently have some mental health disorders and some comorbid conditions, sometimes autoimmune disorders. So how AI can help? So first of all, the first thing is not AI, but for sure is the ecosystem in medicine. So people diagnosed not by AI, they diagnosed by doctors. It's not completely my area of expertise because I'm not a doctor. In terms of AI, there are a few elements. First of all, AI is actively used for MRI scans. It helps to analyze your brain. Also, there is a use AI for a condition like a multiple sclerosis. So it can analyze your eyeball and neural system and predict particular disorders such as a multiple sclerosis or similar conditions. Also, we can use facial recognition or computer vision in order to identify particular pattern in your facial expressions. Also, analyzing your behavior. Another thing is adaptive learning in training platforms. So, for instance, used in workplaces or training, then a patient or a student provide data input, participate in particular testing, and using adaptive mechanism, we can identify learning spectrum. The similar technologies are used for dyslexia. So we work on something similar in Denmark, and this project was supported by European Commission. The technology used eyeball tracking in order to identify your reading pattern, how your eyes are shifting from one word to another, what the speed, what's the pace, what the pattern, and it helps you to identify existing level of disorder if it presented, and also help to provide you with a support and recommendation. And there are similar technologies and apps related to attention deficit. So they help to train your identify your focus, your spectrum, how efficiently you use your time, or how efficiently you're involved in particular learning experience, and after that provide commendation. So I would say AI slightly more important for supporting doctors. It doesn't replace them, and it's specifically beneficial for a more personalized type of accommodation. But I always repeat that AI is a tool. It's not a replacement for nurses. It's not replacement for MRI scans experts who will check and actually identify the disorder or type of a damage. AI just help to get access to more data sets, to more collection of a similar results to provide the doctor or educator with some kind of advice about particular condition or element of a spectrum. And the same with the training and personalization applications.
What legal frameworks and policies? You seem to be involved in a number of frameworks. What do we need to have and put in place to govern the use of artificial intelligence in the context of neurodiversity and human rights? And how can we ensure that these frameworks that are being worked on are responsive to the evolving needs and concerns of the neurodivergent community?
It's a very interesting question because I'm both a technologist and I'm also work on ethics. And basically, I limit myself. Typically people take one of the camps. They either entrepreneurs and they try to build big companies, or they're more like lawyers and human rights advocates. Because it's easier to criticize someone than you do not build these technologies. At the same time, then you build something, you do not criticize yourself because you create the framework which create more limitation considerations and ethical boundaries for your work. But I believe we have no choice, specifically when we address children, then we address people with disabilities, when we address someone who are a part of an assistive supportive ecosystem and they can live without caregivers. So few levels of potential risks. And by the way, they are addressed by European Commission, EU AI Act. AI Act address 4 levels of risks, including unacceptable risk, high risk, medium, and low or no risk. And similar in our area, AI for mental health or cognitive impairments, on one hand, is a silos. When we try to replace, and it's not acceptable, when we try to replace actual educational process with the AI, with the personalized platforms, we put people into some kind of a digital jail. And it's unacceptable because it becomes informational echo chamber. They're not able to interact with the other people. That's why we typically call it filter bubble. It's the same keywords, should know how semantic analysis work. So if you put the same keywords, the same interest, and you're a part of this bubble, it becomes the same. It means you basically become emotionally and intellectually isolated. And these silos are very dangerous. Second thing is a harassment. As I've mentioned, there's a lot of bias related to disabilities, and part of this bias in social network algorithm as well. So as I've mentioned, when I uploaded my content, once I was identified as not alive due to the specifics of my face expressions. And people with the disabilities can be attacked, it can be abused by both algorithms or people who are not able to correctly identify them due to the specifics of their behavior. And also take into account point 1 and point 2 is a manipulation and disinformation. If we put these people into the silos, if we create this situation, then we are not able to protect them from harassment, from abuse. They can be manipulated. They can be an object of a disinformation, because when we completely replace someone as a teacher, as a family, or as a society with the AI, we create some kind of a universal model of a truth. But in this way, we're not able to bring critical thinking. And critical thinking are coming from different experiences. Sometimes experiences some mistakes or errors in actual relationships. And in this way, is a point number 4, is a safety and privacy. People who are not experienced in critical thinking, they're not able to identify the boundaries of their personality and their behavior at social networks. They are very fragile. They are very easy attacked by someone. And that's why 2 years ago, I came up with a quite big framework identifying all of these aspects. It includes actually even more. It includes aspects of accountability, transparency, fairness, human involvement. So, for instance, if we use social robotics with a child, how educator or how medical professional is involved. It's also a question of ownership. So, for instance, if I create something with the AI, how I keep my ownership as a creator in terms of IP, if I'm only exist in this silo. Also, the problem of a caregiver ecosystem. So how we identify the rights and the legal status of every user who involved in this ecosystem. Because sometimes I have an app, I use this app, and there's my mother, there's the educator, and finally the problem of the technical fixes. Technical fixes is an aspect frequently used by social networks and companies like Meta. So what does it mean? It means that if you have a bug or error in your system, you use another autonomous system in order to identify this problem and fix it. It means there is no human involvement. So the error made by system also fixed by the system. But you can imagine if the system is biased, it will perpetuate the same type of a logic, and it will not fix the problem. It just creates some kind of a temporary replacement. And if we create this vicious cycle, we're not able to actually protect our community. And there are many, many other aspects, and there's a constant work. And as I mentioned, UNICEF came up with a framework, AI for girls with disabilities. Why? Because disability for girls is different, specifically in marginalized communities. And we should take into account aspects of intersectionality, of a gender, of marginalized communities, because these people experience these biases even differently and even more, and technology can harm them even more. So all this aspect is a universum of how we can fight and protect the human rights. So first of all, one of the differences of this area, we're working on the two parallel type of frameworks, and sometimes even three. On one hand is a AI in data, documents and frameworks. So everything was started with the GDPR and data privacy framework released in 2018. And after that, European Commission Artificial Intelligence Act was proposed in 2021, and it's still in the process of discussion. And there's also California Consumer Privacy Act in 2018. Mm-hmm. So is an AI in data privacy type of frameworks is one level. Second level is a frameworks addressing disability. So there is a United Nations and Global Convention of Human Rights of People with a Disability, and there are specific organizations addressing such issues. And one of the examples is a European Disability Forum. And we work recently with them presenting issues of children and human rights and working with the AI. And such organization, they provide specific suggestions. So for instance, 2 years ago, just after European Commission AI Act was released, over 100 organizations, including European Disability Forum, signed the open letter of how to make AI safe for disabled community. And myself and our community, we prepared similar letter addressing neurodiversity, addressing cognitive disability and mental health. And we also send it as a suggestions. So is a second level. Third level is the ethics of a technology in general. And hopefully more specific communities is driven by MIT Media Lab, Montreal AI Ethics Institute, Turing Institute in UK, many initiatives driven by European Commission. And hopefully all of them finally identify all of the aspects of a human rights, including intersectionality and gender, disability and ability, economic and social criteria, historical marginalization of particular groups. We still, by the way, plan one of the projects is a festival of AI for indigenous communities in Australia. So this focus also is growing to understand all of the historical context so we could add this knowledge to the frameworks.
Interesting. You mentioned also the Museum of AI. Where is this?
It's still in the process of a confirmation. If it will happen in September this year in Australia. It happened last year. It's September also. It was Saudi Arabia. I've created a global AI summit for the good of humanity, and significant part and inspiration behind the program was the neurodiversity, and we exhibited many amazing teams, including social robotics for autism, some assistive technologies, and the whole spirit and vibe of a program and task forces which were presented but were driven by all of the layers of the humanity, including technology, policy, and the rule of law, and experiences and creative expression of this movement.
Are you a leader, like the main leader for the frameworks, Yonah, for getting involved for the area in neurodiversity?
I would say I'm the main activist. There are a lot of very passionate, very smart, and very talented people. Some of them present more technology area. Some of them present more like a training or working with a child perspective or kind of educational perspective. There are some more specific children-focused educators. My work is to be an activist and connect all together and bring my perspective based on my companies and projects and experiments and experiences. Also as a patient myself, because majority of the projects I've created, they were driven by my own needs as well. Because people ask me, you mentioned there are so many dangerous sides of AI, but what is really good about AI? What drives your passion to work in both on policy, but also on all of its technologies and all of its experiences, experiments, museums, is because technology trained me. Technology helped me to become a part of this society. I don't want to sound rude. People didn't help me. Technology helped me. I really spent years working through remote learning platforms, which provide me with the guidance, with the advices, which help me to build this vision of my occupation, profession, and skills. So I literally tried it in recent 18 years on myself, and it helped me to build the way to be an independent explorer and researcher for the biggest university on the planet, being excluded by almost every ecosystem before. So I still have a lot of hope about technology. It's an extremely powerful tool. And as an artist, as a painter, you should use this tool in the right way.
Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast platform. Together, let's uncover the transformative power of technology and its profound impact on society.